always energizing to hear the scientific aspects of early childhood education, the way our divine creator made the brain, the way it works is fascinating. Most people in here may be beyond some of that early class ability to learn these days, but I think we were all able to absorb what you presented and how thought-provoking it was, and a little bit of stress is okay. I think we can all relate to a little bit of stress, and too much is not. That reminds me of the advice my doctor gave me about wine. It was one of those, a little bit is okay. I do want to thank you for bringing up behavioral health. The governor and first lady have talked a lot about behavioral health, and our conference in June around healthcare was focused on opioids, and something we should continue to talk about as Governor puts forward a plan. We work with them in the business community. I can't think of anyone else that can come up and talk a little bit about the economics of early childhood in such a credible way, who's had a lifetime of working in the business community and the public policy arena, who I have the privilege of working with on my board for many years, and that's Gary Thomson. Many of you know Gary. He's familiar to many of us here in the Commonwealth of Virginia in the business community. He has had a 33 years career in accounting and has led the Dixon, Hughes, Goodman team here in Virginia for several years. Gary has also led other organizations. He was my chair in 2014, and we advanced many public policy initiatives during that time. Gary also serves as my chair of the board of advisors for our foundation, and we've done a lot of good work and studies and more to come in the foundation. But he also was appointed to the School Readiness Committee and now represents the business community on that committee, and now he serves as chair of that important group. So for all those reasons and others, let's thank Gary for his professional and his public service as we welcome him to give some remarks. Gary, thank you.
Well, good afternoon. It's great to be with you. Just before I go into my prepared remarks, that's a difficult one to follow there, right? There's two things that came to mind. First, you saw the diagram that talked about when you learn to play the violin. I'd give you a little recent experience. I turned 50 a few years back, and I decided I wanted to fulfill a lifetime goal of playing the guitar. I'm not very musical. In fact, I basically can play the radio. But I decided I was going to do that, so my wife and daughter purchased me a guitar. I arranged for private lessons. I quickly went to this really well-known guitar teacher who quickly told me, you may just be a little too old for this. So Dr. Friedman, he didn't show me that slide, but basically that's what he was saying to me. The second thing that came to mind is you've heard the story of the famous physicist, in this case I'll say the famous biologist and whatever else was on Michael's resume there, who went around the world giving this great speech night after night and with great eloquence and command of the information delivery. To make life easier, he had arranged a chauffeur to travel with him wherever he went. And after many, many months of driving around and hearing the same speech, the chauffeur said to Michael, you know, I've heard your speech so many times, I could get it. To which Michael quickly responded, you know, I'm tired of giving it, why don't you give it tonight? So that night, sure enough, they switched roles, and the chauffeur stood up and gave a great speech. The real issue was his cadence or pace of delivery was a little bit quicker than what Michael's was, and allowed time for Q&A. So someone in the back of the room stood up and asked this incredibly difficult question, to which the chauffeur, wiping his brow, quickly responded, you know, I can't believe you would ask such a simple question to someone of my stature and profession. To show you how easy it is, I'm going to have my chauffeur So, chauffeur, get ready, just in case. I'm going to take a completely different view of this as a business leader, and hope that what we can do today is talk about the important role that we all have, whether we're here as business leaders, community leaders, philanthropists, or whatever, in supporting this. Now, I'll begin by acknowledging that I really have heard much about early childhood from Ben Davenport, who served on the board of the chamber for a while. I heard it from afar, as Ben would talk about at our chamber meetings. And as is normal, most of what Ben says makes a lot of sense, but I at times scratch my head to really understand whether or not this was a social issue or a direct impact business issue. And so over my decade plus of being involved with Barry and Bill and others at the chamber, and then listening to Virginia business leaders, quickly realized that this is in fact more than a social issue. This is a very direct business impact issue. And I hope in my remarks today that we can address it that way. Why is school readiness for children so significant of a discussion for economic development? Where in 2017, the U.S. Chamber produced a report titled Workforce of Today, Workforce of Tomorrow. And here's a quote from that. A broad set of socially and economically valuable skills start developing in children's very first months, build over time, and are critical determinants of academic and economic success. So there's an inextricable link between a strong start in the early years, as Dr. Friedlander has said today, and the workforce of the future, and the ability of that workforce to be ready to compete in a global environment. Starting with then Governor Mark Warner in 2005, when he appointed the Early Learning Council, the Virginia business community has really rallied behind the idea of early childhood. Since 2005, we've come a long way. Let me just point out a few things that indicate that. No longer are we debating certain facts. The facts such as experiences from birth to age 5 are important for development in a young child. We don't argue those anymore. We don't argue that the achievement gap is actually present at the kindergarten entry level. So in kindergarten, already we have an achievement gap. Nor do we necessarily argue that children's future are nested not only with families, but also with communities. And I'm very proud to say that the Virginia business community has had a lot to do with moving that, from just thought leadership to actually action among our legislators and those that are involved in policy, and then for really getting us ready for this more substantive conversation around school readiness. Dr. Friedlander talked a lot about science this morning, or this afternoon. Science informs us that the development of a child's brain is both cumulative and sequential. One builds on the other. As Nobel laureate and noted economist Jim Heckman says, skill begets skill. Skill begets skill. So as we think about this period of life, think about the future things that we always talk about and how critical it is that we get the early stage right. Whether it's K through 12, higher education, job training, leadership development, all of those build on this critical time. Whether it's great or not so great, the success of our children to perform at those levels is based on how well we perform at the early childhood level. Now, back in 2013, when Bill and Ben and many others in this room, Ned, began the Blueprint 2013 process, Virginia business leaders got together and identified early childhood as an issue in workforce development. It wasn't a new concept, but the focus of business leaders repeating this time and time again, and Barry and others travel across the state, brought an awareness to the business community that this was something that was affecting our ability to not only train our workforce, but to be competitive in a global environment, as well as the environment of our competitors, both to the north, south, and west of us here in Virginia. A few other things that I want to talk about. It's not just about the future. School readiness is about what we do today. So think about these statistics in our current workforce. An unprecedented number of American mothers are in the workforce today. Almost 2/3 of mothers with children under the age of 6 are working outside the home. Nearly 3 in 10 mothers return to work within 2 months of giving birth to a child. And almost 40% of mothers with an infant under the age of 1 are employed full-time. So what does this mean to us? It tells us that many more of our children are spending significant amounts of time in early learning centers, early learning opportunities, whether that be center-based, faith-based, school-based, or in-home care. And so the opportunity for the providers to serve not only a role in helping the workers, but more importantly, a role in helping us with early learning and the workforce preparedness makes this whole issue critical to us as business leaders. Now, I am a CPA. I know you're all excited to hear that a CPA is going to talk right after lunch. We're not going to talk about tax reform or anything of that nature, but I would be remiss in not bringing up the economics or the bottom line impact of what we're talking about today. Did you know that 45% of employees report some form of absenteeism resulting from child care issues? 45%. Now, if you want to quantify that, as a particular study has, that represents about $29 billion of lost wages to our families, another $4.4 billion of direct impact to our businesses. Now, it's a national number, not a Virginia number, so don't panic too much. But it's a big number, $29 billion nationally in lost wages and $4.4 billion direct impact for business. So for these reasons and more, we as business leaders have a direct and vested interest in making sure that we get early childhood right. Now, as we push before us the whole correlation of early years to the eventual workforce development, it's important to realize that this needs to be a public-private endeavor. We can't simply say the public sector needs to do it all, the public sector needs to do it alone. It needs to be a public-private endeavor. Now, with respect to all the great government individuals and legislators in the room today, government does tend to respond to problems by implementing new programs. And oftentimes, these blunt responses leave us with an uncoordinated system that leaves us asking for more. Currently, the early childhood education in Virginia really is a fabric of existing programs around multiple state agencies. And over time, these well-intended but non-systems have developed into something that's hard for people to navigate. And it really remains to our communities and to our families to find a way to navigate these systems. So think of it this way. Think of the program as a building block. Think now of the ability of business leaders, the private sector, to work with the public sector to become the mortar of putting these blocks together to form a strong foundation for the future. That's why I'm so pleased with the work of the Virginia Early Childhood Foundation and what they are doing. And those of you who are involved in the Smart Beginnings Initiative, it's really our job to take these blocks and find a way to mortar them together to form this strong foundation. Now, before you think that this is all about things not happening well in Virginia, we've had a lot of really good things happening. Over the past 2 to 3 years, there's been an accelerated amount of activity around early learning. Here are some of the things that we've done. There's been momentum toward a clear articulation of values and priorities, programs like mixed delivery grants. There's been work toward the reform of the state preschool program. There's been state-level forums for deliberation on these issues. And as was mentioned earlier, there's been the formation of the School Readiness Committee, which I have the privilege of serving, and I'm very appreciative for the work the First Lady has been doing with our group, as well as the Secretary of Education. But the challenges remain to carve a clear pathway, something that accelerates a cohesive, effective, and accountable early childhood system. We're often asked, what's the biggest barrier? And I think those of you who are involved in this issue would say the biggest barrier to progress is simply this. Virginia has yet to adopt a guiding vision and a viable governance framework to get the job done. And I think that's where we as business community can really come in and partner. So let's talk about that for a few moments. As noted earlier, there are a number of services in place doing very commendable and great work throughout Virginia. Yet any attempt to really assess the overall status of where we are with school readiness is very difficult because there is not that cohesive vision, that cohesive leadership structure. So in absence of that, again with 8 state agencies involved, there tends to be some inefficiencies in the system. And we use the word inefficiency loosely, so maybe I'll redefine inefficiency as simply saying that takes good money away from being effective with those who need it the most. Thanks to the leadership of the Governor and Mrs. Northam for bipartisan support from our legislators, many of whom are in the room today, and we're grateful for that. Increased public sector support from Virginia's first Chief Readiness Officer, who is in the room today. The Commonwealth is at a tipping point in its efforts to address early childhood education. So recognizing this tipping point, a number of business executives in this room, and some not in this room today, have formed the Early Childhood Business Alliance. And we're very excited about what this business alliance can do. So the business community working with this alliance and working with the administration, legislators from both sides of the aisle, are planning to introduce what will be called the Early Childhood Success Act. I'd like to tell you just a little bit about that. This act will outline in statute a cohesive, public-private, data-informed early childhood system bolstered by local and regional innovation. For those of you who are familiar, I see WN here today with Go Virginia, it's much the same thought process of having a bottom-up approach that recognizes that each community has different challenges and different assets, and each of those communities then require different strategy for addressing early childhood opportunities. I don't know about you, but we humans have a tendency to shift to the next shiny object. My son-in-law is an avid golfer. When he sees a new ad for a new set of golf clubs, he goes to the next shiny object. My daughter is a marathoner. When she sees a new ad for the next pair of shoes, she runs to that. And we all have this tendency to run to the next shiny object. But without a suitable, long-term, understandable, goal-oriented framework for early education, my fear is that we'll continue to run to the next shiny object when it comes to early childhood education. So it is important for Virginia to adopt a viable and enduring framework that serves as a guide for us long-term. So the question is, what can you do? You're here today as important stakeholders in this conversation. So we need each of you to take a part in framing the dialogue for the future. We need each of you, whether you're a county executive, a local school superintendent, part of a local Smart Beginnings initiative, business leaders, philanthropists, I can keep on going, the First Lady, legislators. We need all of you to be engaged in the idea of a long-term sustainable early childhood education opportunity for Virginia. If we do that, if we together do that, then I believe we'll ensure that Virginia's framework works for communities and families, is locally and regionally responsive, is a shared public-private endeavor, is equitable and accountable, and is a unified system that supports Virginia's children and Virginia's family. I believe now is the time for us to do that. Together we can do it, and let's provide the leadership and the incentive that we need as business leaders and as community leaders to get the job done. Thank you for your time today.